My son said to me, I can hear thoughts. And I said, impossible. And he said to me, you don't get the kind of gifts that I have if you lie.
Are individuals that are non-speaking telepathic? Do they have telepathic abilities? Can they read minds? And let you come to your own conclusions with regards to that. Hello, multimillionaires. Welcome back to my channel. I'm the MultiMillionairess, and today we're diving into the fascinating world of the Telepathy Tapes. It's a podcast by creator Ky Dickens, and it's a fascinating podcast if you ask me. So today we're going to be summarizing episodes 1 through 5 as we delve into the fascinating world of non-speaking individuals with autism and whether or not they have the ability to telepathically communicate. So let's get started. One day while meditating, I got a download and the message said, maybe we don't fully understand autism. And I just wrote that down in my notebook and I kind of left it there and I didn't do anything more with that. Then on Christmas Day, I was doom scrolling on TikTok and I came across one of the individuals that I follow. Her name is the Ky Priestess. And she mentioned the podcast regarding the telepathy tapes and how it was kind of interesting. So I skedaddled on over to Apple Podcast and I found the telepathy tape. So you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts or here on YouTube if you prefer the visuals where she might be actually showing some of the tests that she created and conducted. So off of just the first 12 minutes, I was hooked. Line and sinker. I loved this podcast, okay, just off of the first 12 minutes. And basically what happened was Ky Dickens, who is the individual who created the podcast and the telepathy tapes. She heard a podcast from another academic that was interviewing Dr. Hennessy Powell, I believe. And Dr. Hennessy Powell, we're going to come back into her a little bit later in this show, but she is one of the main researchers trying to get this research out and this information out and people to think a little bit differently about non-speaking individuals. So on this podcast, they were talking about how some individuals might have telepathy abilities, telepathic abilities. And so that piqued her interest. And so therefore she started reaching out to Dr. Hennessy Powell, who were emailing her things like, I think my child might be telepathic, or my child might have telepathic abilities. And so she wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that. But as a scientist, there are things called the material world and the immaterial world. So Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell was able to do some testing and research, but due to limited funds, she kind of had to pick and choose things that she could, scientifically research. And the reason for that is because science, she can't get a typical scientific grant to fund her research because it's considered to be an immaterialistic matter. And so things that are not materialistic don't seem to get much love in the industry, okay? Pretty much. That's what it all boils down to. Materialism is something that can be felt, something can be touched, it's matter. Anything that can be scientifically explored down to a T or a science kind of thing. And if it's not matter or can't be touched or felt, then the scientific community tends to snoot their nose up at it and they don't want to give grants, funds, that kind of thing. So the researcher, Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, took some of the emails that she did receive and she went over some of those individuals with the podcaster Ky Dickens. And from there, Ky Dickens decided, okay, let's meet with one of these families. And so she met with one of the families via Zoom and she was just fascinated about their story because the mom was saying, I think my daughter can read my mind. And so she said, okay, let's set up a neutral facility or neutral location here in Glendale, California, where we can go over some tests that I myself, saying Ky Dickens is saying this, where I can create and control the testing environment. So people that might be a little bit skeptical, they're not going to have any reason to be skeptical because we're going to make sure that everything is going to be controlled. I'm going to buy the videography equipment. I myself am going to buy the blindfolds. I'm going to hire the cameraman. I'm going to put together the test. They did it so that she could say that unequivocally there was nothing shady going on in whether or not this child would be determined on whether or not she was actually had any telepathic abilities. So they met in Glendale, got everything all set up, and they began running some tests. So one of the first tests that was conducted was they did a random number generator. I think she pulled it from her cell phone and downloaded the app right then and there in front of everybody. So they were able to see her downloading this app in person. So it wasn't skewed or anything like that. So the number generator would have numbers from 300 to 999. And so pretty much what would happen is the number image generator on the phone would generate the number. Then the mother would see this number. The child was not able to see this number at all. They were in a different location. Well, not a different location, but not in the same room where they could see the phone and the number. So they read off the number 400, 472, or whatever the number was. And the child was able to telepathically tell what was on this screen. So when I say that they were able to tell them, so I guess I should back up a little bit and tell you guys how these children are communicating, because they are nonverbal. They are communicating sometimes by what is called like typing. So I'm not 100% sure of exactly how it works, but it's something like the child is able to type on some type of device, and the device will either put it out on the screen what the child typed, or either speak it out loud what the child typed. So that is how they are communicating. So the mother got the number in her head. She saw it, didn't say anything. The child read her mind and then typed it out on the screen to say, this is the number that I read from my mother's mind, in essence. So then after they did that, they went through pages in the book. And so she picked an image of a book in the book that the child, of course, had never read the book before, because it was a Airbnb home with just random books there. So the child, the mother turns to the page, and there's a page of an image, and the mother gets the image in her mind, and the child types out pirate. Minds are starting to get blown here. Like, she's able to tell, the child's able to tell the number that the mother has in her mind. The child is able to tell the image that was in the mother's mind. And also in that same book, they would turn to a page and see, okay, this is page number 77. And so the child would read the mind to see that the mother was looking at page 77 and could see from her mind and tell everyone page 77. How cool is that? My mind is like, what? This is just episode 1. We got more episodes to go, y'all. We got more episodes to go. So at the end of that episode, Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell lets Ky Dickens know, hey, I'm getting emails all the time. I have more families, and I think there is another family that you should speak to, because this is not just common to just this one child. I tend to believe that all non-speaking individuals have telepathic abilities based off of my research, and I think you should check out a few other families. So Ky Dickens is like, all right, let's do it. Cool. So that brings us to episode 2. Telepathy, or the merging of consciousness. In episode 2, we meet Manisha and Akhil, and they are a mother and a son. And the son is approximately 20 years old, and he uses an iPad to communicate with his mom. So he can read different things through her mind telepathically, or is he reading her conscious, or is he reading her mind? We still don't really know for sure, because more testing has to be done. But as the episode goes on, Manisha and Akhil, they start to telepathically communicate, and because some things started happening around the house, and Manisha started getting worried and questioning, can he read my mind? Like, there would be incidents where she would watch something on TV, and then she would go to talk to him about it, and he could tell her everything that she had watched on TV when he wasn't even in the room. So she was like, how is he able to do this? Is he remote viewing? Is this telepathically? Is he merging with my consciousness? Are we becoming one? Is he able to read everything, I think? And then she starts getting embarrassed. Like, I could imagine, like, did he see me at sexy time? You never know. If I'm mad, is he able to read my thoughts? When is he able to read my thoughts? Is it only when I'm in a certain type of communicative nature? Is it when I'm deep in thought? Is it only when I'm in meditation? Is it just all times of the day? You just never know until you start to do these types of tests. So Manisha and Akhil also started to do some tests as well. So they started off with a number generator. And that number generator had huge numbers. And every time they went through and they pulled one of the numbers, she held it in her mind and he was able to type out what number she had in her mind. They then started to do an image generator. So it would generate all different types of images. So say, I'm just throwing out examples here, not specific ones that they did in that test, but say it produced an apple tree and she held that thought in her mind. He would type out, oh, it was an apple tree. So he was able to pass the number generator and the image generator with about 95% accuracy, which is incredible in my mind, because 95% accuracy, you can tell me what I'm thinking when we're not even in the same room. We're not in the same location. You can't read over my shoulder to see what I'm looking at. And these individuals are non-speaking. So society has kind of pretty much written them off as these people are just shells of individuals. They're not anyone that's in there. And one of the stories that Ky, the little boy, says, I'm in here. I just want you to know, Mom, I'm in here. And that's kind of how it all started. But there's a lot of stigma with non-speaking individuals, and people just determined them to be slow. But these podcast tapes have really opened my eyes, and some of these individuals are actually savant. And, they can do all kinds of incredible things with their mind, your mind. They have meetup locations. We're gonna stick to the script. I'm just so excited about learning about this. And I had no idea that non-speaking individuals might have telepathic abilities. And this is just really interesting to me, and I hope it's interesting to you as well. So one day Akhil came home from school and he was really frustrated. And his mom noticed that he was frustrated. And Manisha goes, why are you frustrated, Akhil? And he explains that he is frustrated because he was talking to his kid in school and the kid never replied back to him. And he didn't understand why. And he was mad and he was frustrated, which if you were being ignored, you'd be mad too. I was talking to homeboy and he didn't even say hi back. So that's kind of what he was feeling. But Akhil was talking to the boy telepathically and the boy could not hear him, of course. So therefore, he didn't respond. So that frustrated Akhil, and that really opened up Manisha's mind to being like, wow, there's a lot of things going on here that we might need to dive a little bit deeper into it. After Manisha and Akhil did some of the image generating tests and the number generating tests, they then hand Manisha a calculator. And Manisha puts in this crazy number. It's like 44 million times 7,000. Who knows? Some crazy number that I would never in my wildest days be able to calculate. And after she calculated, the number came up. Akhil was able to tell her the exact number that was on the calculator. And that had me wondering and thinking, is he able to calculate it in his mind, or did he just see the final result on the calculator that she saw and was able to just read it because the numbers were on the screen and she had it in her mind? Therefore, he was able to read her mind. So I'm a little unclear whether that was situation 1 or situation 2, but either way, incredible. Ky Dickens then asked Manisha, had there ever been any conversations about God and spirituality or anything like that she had with Akhil? And Manisha indicated that there was a situation one time when Akhil came to her and told her that he had a message from some of her ancestors, and these ancestors had died prior to him even being born. So Akhil has never met these individuals, but he was able to call them by name and give them the message, and give her the message that the ancestors wanted to pass on to Manisha. And so she kind of stopped that because she didn't want him really dabbling into another world where she couldn't possibly control. So they didn't go any further into that, and she didn't think anything of it till another time she was home visiting India, and it was confirmed to her, whatever these messages were, that it was the truth, that Akhil was able to pass these messages along. She had no idea that it was true or anything, but I guess somebody was able to validate those messages when she got to India and told her, I guess, something important. I don't know. It was just validated for her when she went home, okay? But how did Akhil even know that? They then asked Akhil, are other nonverbal autism individuals able to speak telepathically? And he unequivocally said yes, with no hesitation. Bone chilling. So it's not just him, not just the other subject that they researched, but a lot of other individuals that have non-speaking autism are able to telepathically communicate. Cool. Cool. Let's go a little bit further. Let's go into episode 3. Episode 3 is titled Telepathic Communication Between Friends and Groups. Episode 3 introduces us to Katie and Houston, and they live in Georgia. Houston is minimally verbal. So there are different levels of individuals speaking. Some are going to be non-speaking 100%. Some are going to be minimally speaking, and just different things along the spectrum inside that range. Okay. So Houston is minimally speaking. And when Houston was asked whether or not he speaks with other individuals telepathically, he indicated to us that there is a place that they go to that is called the Talk on the Hill. And so the tapes go in to later explain that the Talk on the Hill is a location where they all kind of gather in not the spiritual world, but I don't know how to explain it, but there's a place where they all can meet and talk telepathically. So it's not, you don't have to just be in the same room with Houston in order to telepathically communicate with him, but he has friends in Wisconsin and New York, and he's got friends all over, and they all telepathically communicate. So they meet on the hill and they talk and they laugh and they joke. And when Houston tends to go to the Talk on the Hill, he usually will go into his bedroom and he'll cover his head with a bunch of pillows to kind of drown out all of the sounds that are in the house, that he might telepathically tune into. So could you imagine how that could be so stressful if you lived in a house with other individuals and you could just telepathically read what's going on in their mind? It's like you're jumping from radio station to radio station, or maybe all channels are playing at the same time. That's kind of what it might feel like for Houston. And so in order to kind of drown that out so he is not able to hear the individuals in his house, he puts the pillows over his head, some headphones on his head, so he can try to drown all of that out. And his mom tells the story of one of her girlfriends came to the house and she had 3 stones or crystals, whatever you want to call them. And she gave them to the mother, and the mom was gracious enough to say thank you and all of that, but she didn't really know what to do with them. So Houston, he comes out and he's like, stones. And so the mom is like, oh, here, you can have the stones. I don't need them or want anything with them. So Houston takes the stones and he lines them up on his nightstand right next to his bed. And he kind of lays his head so that he's close to the stones or the crystals. And when Ky Dickens came in, he has a whole house room full of stones now and crystals now, because his mother found out that he really likes crystals and he can really communicate, well, not communicate with, but he interacts with them. He can feel their energy. And so Ky asked him, what is up with all of these crystals? What are you doing with all these crystals and these stones in your room? And anybody that's into metaphysical or crystal healing or anything like that, then you know that different crystals hold different healing frequencies. And so you might have clear quartz, you might have rose quartz, you might have tourmaline, you might have any matter of crystals or stones. They all have different properties and they all have different frequencies and they all have different powers that they can do. And so Houston explained to them, he typed out that when you're special like him, that you can feel all kind of energy and it's really intense. So whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's going to be really intense. And so the stones help him to feel better because they provide good energy. And so he likes to be close to the stones because it's healing to him. He can get on their frequency and it helps him to calm down versus all of the chaotic, hectic energy that's just in our day-to-day world. Electromagnetic energy could be interfering with, things. All the different people he comes in contact, our energy field can expand around 8 to 10 feet around us. Plants, any living thing, Houston said he can feel their energy. So whether that's animals, whether that's plant kingdom, crystals, he can feel the energy. So they wanted to surround him with good energy. So they filled up his room with plenty of crystals and stones. And I just absolutely loved that when I heard that. They then go on to speak about RPM, which is called the rapid prompting method, which is a way of communicating when they're typing out things, and it can group sentences or thoughts into words into full complete sentences and thoughts. So it's called RPM or spelling. So it's considered to be spelling, so they can pull out full thoughts and phrases and experiences so that they can communicate with individuals like us who do speak. So it's not just something, that they just can't communicate with us, period. They do. They have ways of communicating with us, and spelling is one of those ways. Spelling is like another version of typing it out. Excuse me if I have this incorrect. I'm not familiar with this world. I just found it fascinating when I heard these tapes, and I just wanted to be able to come here and tell you guys about it and let you guys go listen to the telepathy tapes and come to your own conclusion of whether or not are individuals that are non-speaking telepathic. Do they have telepathic abilities? Can they read minds? And let you come to your own conclusions with regards to that. So they go on to talk to Houston a little bit further, and they indicate that he's very smart. And it's pretty much because of things that he has taught himself or he's been taught from other individuals on the hill. When they go to the talk, that's when they teach each other different things. They laugh, they joke, they have conversations on this hill. It's their place to go and just talk and just hang out with their friends or meet new people. It's a really excellent location, a really excellent place for them to go. I don't know how to describe it, okay, people? It's a place where they go and they have a good time hanging out. So they explain that usually in school, because they are non-speaking, they get taught the same basic elementary stuff over year over year. They still get the same colors, still get the same shapes. And I can imagine that to be very boring for an individual that is gifted in all kinds of ways. They just don't speak. Some of these individuals speak multiple languages. Some can play the piano without ever being taught. They're just is really brilliant. And could you imagine to be completely every year you're 18 years old and you're in school still being taught rudimentary numbers, colors, shapes. In your mind, you know all of history. In your mind, you know different languages, all kinds of things. But because you don't talk, they just assume that you're dumb and stupid. And that's not the situation for all of these individuals. So they do go to the hill. They teach each other different things. So if someone knows something that another one doesn't know, they can communicate that to them telepathically and teach them about it. And they say a lot of this goes on up there. And they asked Houston, are all non-speakers able to communicate telepathically? And he said, all of them. And I don't know anyone that's non-speaking, because I just want to go up to them and be like, can you hear me telepathically? I just want to talk to someone telepathically. Can you read my mind? Do you hear what I'm saying to you? Oh, if you know someone that is nonverbal, I implore you, go try it out. Maybe you've never thought of this, or maybe you had hints like, is my child able to read my mind? You know, you may have had some hints that they are telepathic and you never wanted to come across it because it's not research. It's not real. Houston then goes on to explain that he doesn't remember a time where he could not read anybody's minds. And he said that all non-speakers can read minds. However, it might vary the range of how good they are at it. So some might only be able to a little bit, and some might be able to full blown read your mind. So as we go through these different tapes, you will notice that some of the nonverbal speakers do have different ranges of how they are able to communicate, how they are able to read minds, and how strong theirs are versus other individuals might not be as strong. So it's kind of interesting to see that dynamic as well, as to whether or not someone might be 100 on the scale versus someone is a 1 on the scale. So it kind of ranges in between all of these individuals on whether or not they're able to be telepathic or not. And another thing that he mentioned was that crowds are hard. And I could totally believe that as an individual who's not telepathic, or I don't believe I have telepathic abilities at the current moment. Crowds can be very hard. They're overstimulating. There's a lot of sensory things going on, you know. So he said for nonverbal speakers, crowds can be very hard. And I can definitely imagine that if you can hear people's minds, and it's not specific to just one person that you're tied into, but you can read anybody's mind, Could you imagine going into a train station or an airport and just hearing all of these random conversations? Yeah, we hear people talking, but we can kind of tune it out. But if you're able to read everyone's minds, how crazy would that be? And you might hear somebody speaking, you're able to read their mind, but you don't know whose thoughts those are coming from. So could you imagine looking around the airport trying to figure out, is that coming from this person? Is that person over there thinking about they want a McDouble sandwich from McDonald's? Is this person over here thinking about Starbucks? Is this person over here thinking about their homework? And you're just getting all these different things while you're in a big crowd. So I can totally understand when Houston said that crowds are very hard for him, because he's tapping into so much. And so, when he needs to come and decompress, he will go to his room, put those pillows on, his headphones on, and kind of zone out. And I totally think that's probably very healthy for him if you're experiencing that on, however frequently you might experience it. Of course, they then start doing the controlled test with Houston as well to see whether or not he's able to tell what's on the name image generator or the number generator. And of course, he's passing with flying colors, able to tell them this is the number, this is the color, this is the word. He's passing with flying colors. One of the production assistants actually goes outside of the house that they're in into the garage, and he writes on a piece of paper, friend. And before he comes back into the house, Houston is already spelling out FRIEND. And that is so crazy because he had no idea what the production assistant was doing in the garage. They were in two different locations. So he wasn't able to see, I see him writing down friend. The guy was in the garage and he wrote down friend, and he came back in with a piece of paper, and Houston was already, before he even came in the house, typing it out. So there's levels to this. I promise you, there's levels to this. One of the other things that they did mention was that Houston's father was a kind of a bad guy. He was an assaulter to his mom. So, Houston, before he even came out as being telepathically able to read his mom's minds and other people's minds, he would know the thoughts of his dad before he would go and beat his mom. Could you imagine the stress that Houston was under to know, oh, my dad is angry, he's pulling out a belt, he's going to go hit my mom, or he's going to come in here and do XYZ to me. I can read his thoughts. I know what he's doing. Could you imagine the torment that he was going through? After those tests were done, they then pulled out a deck of Uno cards. And on an Uno card deck, they have the colored number cards, and they have colors and numbers on them. So once they pulled out the Uno cards, the mom would pull out a number, and Houston would be able to read it and say, oh, it's 7 black, or red number 8, green 4. I don't know. But to get both the color and number combination correct on any randomly generated card. Super cool. So as you could imagine, to be in front of a whole podcast crew that has cameras and they're recording and everyone's taking audio and visuals, and there's chords and people coming in and out. It's a whole crew. It's a lot during these type of recording days when you're doing a test like this. So number generators, image generators, people coming in and out. That's a lot on an individual. And Houston was so patient during that day. And they asked him, how was he doing? Was he okay with it? And he indicated, I'm fine. We have to do this work because I want people to know that we're in here, that we are smart. This is important work we're doing to move the movement forward so people can actually understand us. And so I thought that was incredible as well, to be able to say that, he was just being patient with the process, because so a lot of us would have lost patience that day with all of the different tests, colors, the lights, the audio, the video, going different rooms, people coming in and out. It was like a long work day, and he was just being patient and saying, you know what, this is important work that we're doing, to make this progress move forward. And so I'm doing the best that I can to help you guys. And I thought that was really beautiful. Afterwards, they gave Houston's mom a Bible, and she opened up the Bible and she just pointed to a word, and he was able to telepathically tell her, type out what the word that she was thinking or reading was. So another example of him just passing all of these tests with flying colors. And if any of you guys have read the Bible, that's not even regular English. The King James Bible version of the Bible is verily, verily, truly, truly, I say unto thee. It's not typical English, language. So him being able to tell her exactly what she was reading was pretty incredible as well. And then he went back into talking about how they meet at the hill and how sometimes they talk to each other, they pray for each other, they teach each other different things. Then one of the other moms contacted Houston's moms and said, hey, my child is best friends with your son Houston, and they lived in Idaho. And Houston's mom had never heard of this lady or her child or anybody before, and she gets this random call from her, and she's like, hey, my child meets at the hill as well. And so they're like, wow, so you don't even have to be in the same room, same state, anywhere. This is happening all over the world, that they are talking. They meet at the hill and they talk. So now we have someone that's in Georgia that's friends with someone over here in Idaho, and they talk all the time. They're best friends. So the meeting, this place on the hill, I really want to dive a little bit deeper into that. I can't wait till she goes a little bit further in some of the future episodes about what she might learn more about the hill and the talk on the hill. That brings us to episode 4, which is titled Teen Love with a Twist of Telepathy. Episode 4 brings us to Atlanta, and we're focusing on John Paul, who is a 16-year-old with autism, and he shares a deep telepathic connection with his friend Houston and his girlfriend Lily. The episode highlights how these non-speaking teenagers communicate and connect on profound levels, challenging our understanding of relationships and communication. In episode 4, we are introduced to John Paul, which is Houston's friend, and his mom is named Libby. And I did want to go ahead and correct myself that I jumped a little bit ahead of myself when I indicated that it was Houston that would be in the room with the pillows. It was actually John Paul that would be in the room with the pillows. So forgive me for misspeaking with that. And when John Paul came to his mom, Libby, and asked her, I guess, to call Houston's mom, Libby didn't even know that he was telepathic in any way, form, or fashion. And it wasn't until Houston's mom told Libby, maybe you might want to try and see whether or not he's telepathic or not, because I believe that your son might be. And that kind of opened up a whole new world for Libby, because she had no idea that her son was telepathic. They then brought in Jeff Tarrant, who is a clinical psychologist and a neurologist, and he does what is called the QEEG, which is like a dual EEG reading or something like that. So it's kind of able to take the EEG reading and see, okay, this is the baseline level that we are at, and this is when he's active, this is the level that he is at, and when he's not active with the telepathic, this is the number that he is at. So when they did the baseline test on Houston as well as on John Paul, the baselines were totally different. When they were active, they were both totally different as well. And so that pretty much indicated to the psychologist, the clinical psychologist or the neurologist, that John Paul is pretty much always in an active state of telepathically reading people's minds, versus Houston, who kind of turns it on and turns it off. So when Houston turns it on, then you can see on the EEG scene that his numbers are going wild and he's able to read telepathically. But when he kind of like turns it off, then his baseline is totally different than when he's actively telepathically reading minds. So I thought that was very interesting, as you can see on the different scales of how they both can telepathically communicate within other individuals, whereas John Paul is just doing it nonstop. Houston, he taps in and does it when he wants to and when he doesn't want to. So he can kind of turn it off. So that's why I wanted to go back and make that the statement clear that I was wrong when I previously indicated that John Paul is the one who puts the pillows over his head, because he doesn't turn it off the way that Houston is able to turn it off and on. He's always on. And so to kind of help alleviate all of the chatter, he will put the pillows over his head in order to try to calm things down and so it's not so loud for him. John Paul then explained that You don't have to be in the same room to telepathically communicate with another individual that can telepathically communicate. So that's why he lives in Idaho and he's able to communicate with Houston down in Georgia, because they don't have to be in the same room. It's kind of like a system. They described it like how the trees are. So you know, with a tree, how their roots go deep, and then they can communicate different, with each other. The trees communicate through their vines and roots and everything like that. It's kind of how they are able to telepathically communicate as well, so that they don't have to be in the same room, same zip code, or same state at the same time in order to telepathically communicate. And sometimes they'll say they're going to meet up at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. Make sure you're at the Hill. Let's talk, kind of thing. That's really cool as well, that they didn't have to be in the same room, and they could have friends all over the world that are also telepathic, that they meet with and talk to. They can go to hang out with other people that are just like them, that understand them. And one of the things, that one of the individuals indicated was that he didn't know he had a body. There was no connection to his body. And he was not aware that he had a body until his mom let him know, hey, you have a body. And they began to do sensory stuff, touching, and then that's how he came to know that he had a body. So I thought that was really cool as well. John Paul has two goals in life right now. One is to be an independent typer, so that he doesn't have to have anybody holding his hand or helping him to keep it steady while he's typing, so he can communicate with with verbal individuals. And his second goal is that he wants to marry his girlfriend. He has a girlfriend, and he's got the hots for her, and he wants to marry her. And it's really cool to kind of hear them talk about their relationship. John Paul's girlfriend is named Lily, and she's also nonverbal as well. And she speaks telepathically as well and is able to read minds. And she's a little bit more edgy. I like Lily when they're talking about and describing her on the telepathy tapes. She's a little edgy. I like her. I think she gives a little spunk, a little to the relationship. But she was also able to tell everyone that, yep, I can read minds as well. And she actually speaks multiple languages. She speaks Spanish as well. And so it's kind of like, how did you learn how to speak Spanish, Lily? Because who taught you how to speak Spanish? Did you just come here knowing how to do it? Did you teach yourself? Did you learn from other people on the Hill? How did Lily learn Spanish? We do not know, but Lily knows Spanish. So that day, Lily, as well as John Paul, were saying that there was almost 1,800 people on the Hill at that day. And usually it's not that many people. And they said, well, what's going on? Why is so many people at the Hill today? And they said it's because they're all so very excited about the research that is going on and that's going to be presented about non-speaking autism and telepathy. And they were just all so excited. So they all just came to the Hill, and I guess they're all talking about it. And it was just crazy. I like that. And that brings us to episode 5, which is titled Telepathy in the Classroom. Episode 5 explores the experiences of educators who have encountered telepathic communication with their non-speaking students. Teachers share stories of mind-to-mind connections that bypass traditional communication methods, prompting a reevaluation of educational approaches and the potential of the human mind. Episode 5 touches on the topic between teachers in the classroom and nonverbal speakers. So pretty much, as you could imagine, there's going to be a stigma around this whole situation. So a lot of teachers that deal with autistic individuals that are nonverbal may have kind of noticed in the classroom that, hey, these people are able to kind of read my mind. And so put yourself in their shoes of the teacher. If you start to get some hints or inclinations that one of your students might can read minds or might can read your mind, who are you going to tell? Are you going to go tell other teachers? If they teach basic math for 9th grade and they don't deal with these special classrooms, they've probably never come across it. So they're going to look at you kind of funny. Who are you going to tell? The principal? They're going to shut that down, or, you can risk losing your job because they're thinking you're crazy in the head when you just it's a stigma, and so you just don't want to be ostracized by it. So what do you plan to do? You just end up shutting up. And that's why this research has not gone much further, because some of the teachers are afraid to come out and speak out about the situation because they could lose their job, their livelihood, their money, their income if they speak out on the situation, because it's not something that's widely known or accepted, and therefore, is a risk for them coming out to be a quote unquote whistleblower on the topic. The episode kind of talks about a couple of different teachers and their experiences. And one of the teachers talks about how she had a child that had graduated from her class. And so he was not a part of her class anymore, but she was going to go visit him. So the night before, she was thinking, I'm going to go to the grocery store and get some snacks that he might like. So she went to the grocery store and she got some snacks for him. So she gets to the school the next day to bring the snacks in. And there's other kids in the classroom, and she forgot some of the snacks. And she was like, I don't want to bring them in because I don't want the other kids to be jealous or whatever. And so he kind of types out to her like, where the rest of my snacks at, ho? He had read her mind because he knew that she went to the grocery store the night before and got these different snacks. So he was like, where's my chocolates? Where's my cookies? Where's all my stuff at? What is my gummies? Where my gummy fish at? And she didn't have everything with him. And she's like, how did you know this? And then she was wondering, like, are you always reading my mind? Because that can feel kind of invasive. And then he was able to communicate with her that, no, I'm not always reading your mind, but it was kind of a doorbell ring to me when you started thinking about me, that heightened my thoughts to tap into your channel. So when the teacher started thinking about him, it was like calling his name. And so then he heightened his sentences and turned into what she was doing, and was able to see, okay, her walking down the aisles of the grocery store and her getting the different things, the different snacks. So that's how he was able to know when she came in that day that he didn't have all his snacks and he wants his snacks. It's my money and I want it now.
My money and I need it now.
A different teacher was able to say that she found out that her children could read minds in the classroom, and they kind of wanted her to be able to know that they were reading her minds and kind of understand and communicate with them back telepathically. So there was one kid in the classroom that would kind of take the lead, that, he would say things in her mind and she could hear them. So little Johnny, or whatever the child's name was, I don't know, would be saying, she'd be in the principal's office and he'd say, hurry up and get back to the classroom because we need paper and pens. I'm just throwing examples out there. I don't know what he exactly said, but she would run back to the classroom and they would all be like cheering, like, yay, she got the message. She heard it when you told it to her telepathically when she came in the room with paper and pens. So the crowd would be like, yay, she understood us. So there are some teachers that are actually able to be taught how to telepathically receive messages from their children in the classroom. And she was able to do this with one of the kids. She was able to do this with one of the kids, and that was really interesting. So that kind of summarizes a really very general overview of episodes 1 through 5 of the Telepathy Tapes, this podcast by Ky Dickens. But if this is something that you're interested in, I definitely tell you, go take a listen for yourself. It should be available everywhere podcasts are available, as well as on YouTube. You just look up for the Telepathy Tapes by Ky Dickens. Her name is spelled Ky, and Dickens, Dickens. So if this is something that interests you, go take a listen to these podcasts. I'm going to go finish episodes 6 through 10. And once I have them finished, I'm going to come back and summarize them for you guys as well. I really have enjoyed this topic. And it really just opened up my mind to, we don't understand autism, and the range and the spectrum that these individuals can be on, and what their telepathic powers might be. I'd be interested to know if any of my readers, readers, what is this, a newspaper? If any of my fellow multimillionaires here on YouTube have any personal experience, and if so, feel free to comment down below and let's get a discussion started. Does your child, or do you know anyone that might be nonverbal and you have a hint of they might be telepathic. Let us know down below in the comments. I love to explore that and maybe even have you as a guest here on our YouTube channel. So this is really interesting to me. Go check out the podcast. And if you like this episode, I'm so glad you stayed this long and give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. But I really like this. And I thank you guys for watching. Love ya.